All right, so today, oh, I guess this is the same day as the earlier video, to be honest. But in this video, we'll switch gear a little bit and now talk about a couple of things that are not about research, but rather it's more about your career, right? To be honest, more like job related. So today we'll cover two topics: resume and elevator pitch. Right. For those of you who are teachers students, I'll send an email before the class begins actually, because I can promise that this will be a part of the seminar class in the first semester. So you will basically see this video before. If you're in a research methodology class, it's the same video. So today will be job related, focusing on how to write a resume and how to do elevator pitch. What you might be asking, like, what is the elevator pitch? Basically, the name comes from the pitch that you would give to someone else in an elevator. An elevator is really, really fast, right? So you spend at most a minute talking to that person about something you're working on. And then something that I realized that as a student, I struggled quite a lot in the beginning, and I got helped by many of my colleagues how to make a small talk with engineer and researcher, because we are actually engineers doesn't have a lot of social skill, and that's one of the things that many people are aware of. So when you want to connect to another engineer, making a small talk is important, right? So I will talk a little bit about that today. Today it should be a really, really quick video with a few examples from using my own resume. And then I'll first begin with about how to write a resume, right? So the first thing when you write a resume, you need to be aware of what is this for. What is this for? Is this for a job interview? If it is, for what kind of position? That is for engineer, researcher position, academia, or a manager position. Is this for an internship? I'll show you an example of my own resume when I applied for an internship back in my, I think that was the second year of my PhD, right? Who's going to be reading the resume? You have to actually answer this. Are they going to be professors, engineers, like your colleagues, engineer, researcher, or an HR team, right? Or a combination of these people. And is this for a scholarship or a fellowship? What does the funding entity look for, right? What does it look for? You might want to gather that information first because you want to adjust your resume based on these answers. Why is that the case? You want to be able to understand your audience. That is king, right? Again, you want to check who will read your resume. And at the end of the day, it's a gateway for an interview, right? Think of it that way. It's a gateway for an interview. It doesn't give you a job. It's not going to give you a job. It will give you an interview. And if you do well in an interview, and to be honest, you need, when you do an interview, you need the technical knowledge as well. There can be a live coding or a certain live exercise that you have to do to show the interviewer that you can do certain tasks, right? The resume should not flood the reader with too much information. So use bullet points, avoid long sentences that would span multiple lines. I've seen this sometimes, and I always question people who make this like decision to put in wall of text without parsing them for the reader in a resume, because no one is going to read it. Quick hint, check the job description, check the lab and the company profile, because you want to cater your resume based on your target. See what will interest the reader, right? What would interest the reader? So what should be included, right? You definitely should include your professional and core interests, right? This tell you who you are when you apply to the position. Just tell you professionally who are you. You want to tell the education background. So this should include the time period of your education. This is kind of default. Everyone would have this section. It's like I got under sorry. I got an undergraduate degree here, this place between year something to something. Um, your work experience. So list any previous position that you work on, but don't just list them, but put in a summary of your key tasks that you've done. As long as you're not breaking the NDA, by the way, like don't break the NDA. So if something that's secret, don't say that. But you can summarize the key tasks. Like you can say, hey, you're a programmer at this company, and the task is to maintain certain things. Make sure you abide by the law. Like don't put in secret information. But make sure also that you can convey what have you done. Convey what have you done. You also want to put in start and the end months and year, right? If you are applying, especially for a research type position, you want to put in list of publications. If you want to apply for engineering position, you definitely want to put in projects that you've done, right? If you are an applicant with previous projects that are cool, actually it can be your hobby projects that related to the position you're applying to, right? For example, I'll give you one another example. Like we are program, right? We are computer engineer, right? Or electrical engineer, or communication engineer. We are engineers at heart. Sometimes we build things that are around you. We just build things out of hobby. We want to build certain things, right? Put it in, put it in your resume and highlight that those projects, because these are going to become your professional portfolio, right? You also want to consider what you put in here as well, because if it's a trivial project, it can look really bad. Like, oh, is that something you call a project, right? So don't make sure you don't put something too trivial as a project you put in here. What else should you include? Like things like award and honor. Sorry about the ordering animation box. Professional license and certificate, if you have them and you want to show that you have them. Keep in mind that if you apply to like many of the top computer science company, we don't care about this. Like they will assume you know how to do it. As like for those of you who went, I mean, all of you who went to the seminar class, you've been through this like panelists, right? And there's a question that's great from you guys that talk about what does the interviewer looks at a top tech company. They would look at someone who is coachable, right? So they will assume you can do these things. Award and honors, put them in, but as long as they're not like stupid award. I've seen some instances of that, like that are not related to the job at all. Don't put like if it like participation award at certain like events, don't put that in. So make sure you consider what should you put in there. Skill, right? Companies would assume you have basic skill. Don't put in, I know how to use Microsoft Word. That assumption is like everyone should know how to use like Microsoft Word and Excel, right? To some extent, like basic Excel, everyone should know how to use it. I see so many of that, like knowing how to use Windows, knowing how to use Linux. If you put in knowing how to use Linux, you definitely want to make sure you know how to use Linux really well. That would be more like a really like people who can control Linux in using command line to do every single thing. Yeah, put it in, right? But if it's trivial tasks, don't put them in. They're gonna assume you have them. But this is where you can show the advanced skill. This is where you can show your skill as an individual that you can do, right? Especially on things that you think your colleagues cannot do as well as you do, right? Put it there. In some cases, you also want to put relevant classes, right? Especially if you're fresh graduates from a university. Put in classes, don't list all of them because your transcript already have that information, but put in the important ones that are relevant to the job. So you might want to like kind of pick which one you want to include it depending on the position you're applying to. So that's basically the key. And then you want to find a good template, right? You must organize the resume. The goal is to make it easy to read. There are also many easy to read resume templates that use too much white space. If there's a lot of empty space and you want to put a lot more things on your resume, don't use a template that has too much white space. Right? There are multiple resume templates that looks nice depending on how much content that you have. So pick the one that suits whatever you want to put in. And don't use a blank template with no organization whatsoever. I've seen that as well. It looks really bad. Readers should be able to see who you are. See who you are. That's the key. See who you are in less than 10 minutes. Check for all the alignments. Make sure they align. Use the same font throughout. Don't confuse people with multiple different fonts. Put in contact information on the resume itself so they know how to contact you. The indentation should be maintained for the same font size. Better yet, use the same font size. Right? That's kind of like better. My recommendation, definitely work with your advisor because we can help you write our own resume for sure. We've been helping student resume quite a lot. Keep in mind that we're not perfect, right? So now I'm going to go and show you some of the example. So these are, so let me pull it up here. So these are this one is a resume I used, I think back in 2012. 2012 is like my second year PhD. This is like early 2012. So the beginning of the end, kind of like the beginning of my second year PhD, you can see that I put in for sure my name on top, right? And then the department, university, and my email, right? My email down here. It provides a basic contact so that you know who you are. I mean, the reader now know who you are. I put in the office location, this is where my cubicle is in the office, and my current address, because if they want to contact me by sending the actual mail, they can mail it here, which I'll receive. I put in mobile phone right there as well, so they can contact me. The first thing I put in, as you might have noticed, objective, right? This is one of the key things that I really, really want to recommend you to have them on your resume. What's my goal of this resume? So I'd say short-term, secure and research internship in the field of computer architecture. And then long-term, I want to join academia. Well, to be honest, I know I have to because of my scholarship contract that I have to be in academia for 20 years. Based on the scholarship. Otherwise, I have to pay too much money back to the government. So yeah, you put in both long-term and short-term goal, right? So that the people reading your resume would know like who you are and what are you trying to achieve. Then, because I said I want to secure a research internship, I put in a research interest, right? So I say computer architecture and the area that I'm working on, right? Back in the day, I looked at heterogeneous multi-core architecture, network on-chip, and memory subsystem. Education, there's like a default. Make sure the indentation is looking nice. Like make sure it's this, like there's a section, some form of section to this. I put in publications that I have been working on, right? So because it's a research intern, right? It's good to also tie that with some of the papers that I publish. This one is co-author, so it highlight my name, right? It basically show me, okay, this I'm in here as a part of the authors. And so like paper submission. It's basically they'll say, hey, under submission ISCA 2012, right? For those of you, if the reader are in the HR position, they'll know, oh, okay, this person also have many other ongoing submission as well. They can forward to the research team. The researcher at the company, when they read these, right, they'll know, oh, okay, this paper is submitted to ISCA. This paper is also submitted to ISCA, right? ISCA is like a top tier architecture conference. So they know that, hey, I'm aiming for something of this tier, right? They know that, hey, that the work, the title is there. So you can guess what are the topics that I'm working on, right? So they know me more as a person. Then I also have a technical report, so I put in here. Work experience. So basically, this was my previous internship at AMD Research. So I put it in here. I put in the task, right? Research focus, which actually spawned that paper under submission, which actually eventually got accepted to this ISCA 2012, right? So I say the position name is co-op engineer. I put in the mentor name, Gabriel Lowe, right? And I put in the period of my internship, summer 2011. Right. So with this, you know enough information that, hey, I worked at as an intern at AMD Research with this particular researcher as a mentor, and here's my research focus. I put in invention disclosure. Basically, we are filing for the patent. At the time, the first step is to file for invention disclosure. You can see that here. Okay, these are the name. It's got file while we are at AMD. And then I put in research experience because I know my target audience. I'm aiming for research intern. I'm aiming for research interns. So I put in research experience, both graduate research with my professor name in here, ongoing, right? I put in research focus. It explained again the same focus that I'm looking into, right? And then I put in undergraduate research, which I have done between fall 2008 to spring 2010. I put in the brief explanation of the project, right? So its the explanation is here. And then because as a typical PhD student, right, most of the time, well, we would have to TA. Becoming a teaching assistant is a big part of kind of growing as a academia, right? So I put in here, I teach, become the teaching assistant and lab assistant for this class between fall 2008 to spring 2010. I also put in like funding and honor, right? So back in the day, because I just graduated undergrad, I didn't put in, I'm not sure if I have it in anymore with my current resume, which is a while ago, but I might have forgotten to just like get it out, right? So I put in like university honor, honor research program. So if you have something like that, feel free, you should put it in. Actually, it kind of highlights you as a really good candidate, right? If there's an undergraduate class project, put it in here and put in the bullet points explaining, right? Explaining what you've done. Feel free to include the link if it's also available, right? For those of you taking IoT class this semester, I basically enforce everyone here to post their code in GitHub and have the logs of update in github.io. So you can definitely showcase your project here, right? And then over here, I put in relevant courses, right? So this is basically where I tell my audience, and these are something related to the research intern position I want to apply for, right? So that's the one example. This was again my second year of PhD, which is translating directly at the second year of master here, because I went directly from undergraduate degree to PhD. I didn't do a master. So second year PhD is kind of like basically you guys' age right now, right? So this is basically something that hopefully is relevant. Like you can put in undergraduate projects, you can put in projects you're doing right now, you can put in any honors. You are having DAD scholarship, put in the funding, like you got the DAD scholarship for your master program, right? It's a great thing that you should put in. It shows that you are not just a person that can do X and Y and Z, but you also have you can be a really good candidate for the company. All right, so that's one example. I'll show you another one that I opened right here. So this is basically my current resume. I haven't updated it for I think like half a year, so I definitely need to update this. So you see that I kind of get rid of the the true address, right? These days we can't contact each other through email. That's a common thing, so I just put it there. I still keep the research interest, but I didn't have the objective. These are kind of like a blank resume that I would give to certain, like let's say if someone say I need to submit a CV or resume to them. And I'm not actually applying for a position, so I just put in my research interest because my position is already like assistant professor at a university, right? So I get rid of that. But for you, definitely make sure you keep that objective. What do you want it the use the resume for? I can say the same thing, education, and then I added a bunch of work experience, right? You can see that the same things back in the 2012 is here, right? That resume helped me got this position at NVIDIA Research. So that was summer 2012. And you can see I added like Intel and VMware afterward. So I put everything here to show that I've been working at multiple places with different research focus, but you can see the theme, right? So if you kind of look at the chain of research focus on my work experience, it tells me who I am. I look at GPU a lot. I look at quality of service. I look at virtual machines. I look at how to provide better cloud services, right? So you can see that, okay, I can be applicable for people who would do virtualization, cloud infrastructure, GPU design, and also basically this is telling me I have to update this, I think. So yeah, you can see that, okay, I also include my undergraduate degree as well as the PhD, right? It would put me like basically it would paint who I am, right? And make sure you don't have a typo like this extra bullet point is back. So don't put it in. I definitely need to update this. You see that I put in a lot of selected publication. The reason I say selected publication, which also I have to update this is year 2022. There's a few more work that I want to put in here. So these are something that I want to highlight. The reason actually the way I picked this is like, it's either something that I feel like these are interesting for who I am as a researcher, that would be like most of the time top papers, right? So if I'm to update this, because I definitely have to update this, I'll get rid of some of these that are like older, or go to the venues that I feel like, okay, it's a little bit not as important as some of the other work. So yeah, so I use this resume for one of the government funding, so I kind of have to like put as many as I'm looking for. In reality, right, make sure this is more compact. We don't want a long resume, so I kind of make it more compact by, because this resume, as I said, is used for government funding, and they've really focused on my publication. So I need to expand that section, and I shrink the rest. As you can see here, as my patent, so the invention disclosure, the file in a patent, right? I put in all here, right? So I at like an award that I got later. And then because I'm a professional engineer now, right? I put in professional service. These are additional things that you can explain that, hey, these are what you've done to the community, right? So you can basically I've added things that I helped in my professional area of computer architecture, right? So I'm a program committee for multiple top conferences. So I put it here as well as an external review committee, because I mean, if you're in the area, you definitely, if you want to start your career as an architect, especially in the research area, this is basically helping your career. And also helping the community, like basically helping review the paper, right? So it would tell people who read, basically people who read this resume that, hey, I also not just working on my own thing. I also help the community reviewing a bunch of paper, trying to contribute to the community as well, right? So this is basically how you can construct your resume. So as I said, this is basically because the target audience over here want to focus on research. Here you go, a bunch of research papers that I published, as well as things like professional services, right? The other one that I showed earlier for internship, so I put in objective, I put in some of the projects I've done, right? And again, work with your advisor. Why? Oh, we are not perfect. We can help, and we are willing to help. All right. So that's about resume. What's next? I want to talk about elevator pitch and small talk. But I mean, the first thing I have to talk is like, what is that, right? So basically, this is a way to, it's like a method to quickly explain your project. This can be done in multiple scenarios, right? For example, someone visit your lab, and for example, I can ask you, what did you do? Can you explain your project quickly, right? So your description should be concise within 1 minute. Within 1 minute, I should understand what you're trying to do. So it should be easy to understand, because you don't even have time to gauge your audience. So to use your best judgment on what can I tell about myself, so that they know exactly what did I do. You want to get to the point. The person asking should get the idea of what you're doing, right? And it should be interesting, right? So let's practice this, right? And we would practice this by giving you an assignment. You would go and do an elevator pitch. Please stay within 1 minute. But I mean, if you need more, it's fine. So I give you up to 3 minutes. But please do stay within 1 minute. That will be more perfect. Explain your projects so that I can see who you are professionally. Right, so hopefully it's more fun project, as long as you don't like throw around with the project. As long as you try to explain what you're trying to do, it's good enough. So there'll be a link on the assignments that is called elevator pitch. What I'm gonna ask you to do is to record yourself, right? Talking about what you're working on. And you can put the link on, I mean, you can post the video on YouTube so that you can send me the link in the submission. And I'm going to grade it based on your performance. And don't be too serious about like, oh, I have to be perfect. Make sure that if you listen to yourself, you understand who you are. So that's the goal, right? Is you cover what you're working on. Why should I care about the problems you're working on? So what's cool about it? What's cool about it? Because you can use this to kind of strike the conversation and make a small talk, right? So once you pitch, you can then follow up with small talks. When you're in the professional world, you need to be able to make small talks with people you do not know. Things like during a break at a conference, or after when you go to a technical conference, or when a professional training. You want to be able to network with your fellow engineers. If you go and attend a conference, I do recommend you, when you go to the conference, spend all your time working. And when I say working, go and enjoy the talk at a conference and then talk to your colleagues, network and learn about what other people are working on, learn about the things that are going on in your community so they can see how can you contribute, right? So many conference would have like a day-long kind of schedule, right? I mean, I know it's COVID season, but I mean, once this thing is over, it's likely to be on site again. So you have a chance to go to the conference. After the conference is done for the day, people would gather and go for dinner, go there and hang out. My schedule when I go to conference is going to be uh, I wake up, I try to wake up as early as possible, listen to the keynote, listen to the talk. During the break, I'll go and talk to. Sometimes I go catch up with some of my friends who went to the conference from another university. On hey, how are you? What do you work on these days? How's life, right? And then you kind of network, gradually learn, like know more people and know what they're working on, so that you can actually expand your knowledge, because they're gonna do elevator pitch to you. So okay, work on this. Like it's interesting because these reasons. So you learn. Um, and then I'll go to dinner with some of my colleagues. Sometimes it's people I do not know, but I met at a conference. Usually we go in a big group, right? And we would kind of learn about the work at different places, how are things done, and then try to sometime in when it's later in the career, like let's say you're like a late PhD, or when you're looking for a job as a master's student, then there are also people recruiting for an employees at a company, right? So you want to also see if you can kind of like apply to different places by talking to this professional. In many cases, if you go to this event alone, right, at best you might, well, when you go into the event alone, and if your advisor is there, ask him or her to introduce you to their friends. It helps to break things in. And when that's done, right, because we are aware that engineers are socially awkward animals, right? So we don't mind at all when it becomes awkward. It's like, okay, trust, right? You can collaborate and work together and see what other people are working on. So you learn about what's going on in your area so that you can learn cool new topics, right? And also if you're applying for jobs or you are graduating soon, you can see who is hiring, right? And the tip for making a small talk is, first of all, make sure when there's a chance, like if it's ongoing conversation, don't just suddenly blurt out don't suddenly introduce yourself, because you're gonna have your name tag with you, right? But you can, if someone asks like, okay, hey, how are you? Who you are? You can use the elevator pitch to quickly introduce your work, right? Because people care about your work a lot, right? So use the elevator pitch to introduce your work. Keep in mind that most people also do not know each other, but we're not assholes. We're trying to learn to know each other and know what they're working on. And most of them want to expand their network so that you know people who work on different topics, so that if they want to collaborate, they know who to contact in the future. And be aware that we are all socially awkward creatures, so it's okay to be awkward somewhat, right? Don't be too awkward, but I mean, hopefully. but we also help each other quite a lot. So don't feel like, oh, I have to be perfect when I socialize. Like, no, do not have to be that way. You want to also identify the right audience, right? Who do you want to talk to, and because you have limited amount of time, you make a small talk, right? Make sure you spend your time and energy wisely, and minimize people effort to check your professional profile, right? This is allow if you want to get hired, for example, you're graduating soon, right? You want to make sure you are as ready to explain who you are as possible, right? And then the last topic I want to talk about is like, okay, how do I prepare for an interview? So this is pretty unique topic here for the class, to be honest. But I want to include it because many of you here would have to apply for internship in the next semester. So it's good to know. Again, the same thing apply. Understand your audience, right? You want to see who is gonna interview you, right? So it's a good tip to check their professional profile so that you know what team they're working on, what type of area of expertise he or she or them might be in, so you know what their previous works, right? When I apply for a research intern position, I will see the previously published paper of the people and the team that I'm gonna be applying to, right? So that would give me some clue on how should I like where first of all, like whether I want to join this group or not, and whether how should I prepare actually for an interview. The question from interviewers can go really deep, right? Depending on where you are. Because I mean, if I'm curious, I'm gonna keep asking a question. It basically gonna give me a lot of impression, which is good, right? So if it goes really deep and you do well, it's like, oh, okay, this means that you're doing really well, right? So I've been asked, for example, to explain my research and current projects. This is normal, right? Every one of the interviewers ask, like, okay, what was your research? What was your projects? What have you done? This is also normal. Let's say I have like a research problem, right? Or problem in general in your case. So let's say you apply for a position. They say, hey, here's the problem. How are you going to attack this problem? And you go into the detail on, here's what I would do. Here's what I would do if this happened, or if another event happened, this is what I'm going to do. And then they might be asking you to do like a live coding exercise, right? Or I've been asked to mathematically prove a few things on the phone, right? So they can go pretty deep, right? So be prepared and do your best, because I think what they're trying to look for is not just the answer, but how are you going to approach the problem to get to the answer. If you don't have the answer, it's okay if you have a really good approach to reach the solution. You want to make sure you know exactly everything you listed on the resume, right? Because it's a common thing for interviewers to ask. So if I have to interview someone, like for example, a candidate at TGGS, I will look at their resume and say, okay, can you explain more about this project, right? So you can have a question that asks you to clarify what's your contribution to the project? What did you learn from the project? It can be a question based on skill you list, or it can be a question based on any interesting class project you've done. If your resume has a gap year, they may be asking, okay, what about this year that you didn't say anything in the resume? What have you done, right? So you can say, hey, I checked Pop and travel the world, it's fine, right? Who actually, that's a totally legit answer if you did that, right? They may be asking, okay, anything interesting from that year so you can share. They don't just want to see you as a professional, but they also want to see you as a colleague, like as a human being. Are you easy to work with? Are you easy at explaining whatever you're trying to do? So the skill definitely have to be there, but you also want to make sure you're not asshole. Basically, you can work with your colleagues. Something I asked during the so when we do literature survey presentation, right? Things that I ask during our Q&A session can be a really normal questions when you list a project. I will ask you to go deeper in your project, and interviewer would do the same thing. You want to go and basically tell them the story of like, what did you learn? What's the key finding? What have you done in this project? What's your contribution, right? When you throw out keywords, make sure you know the keyword you're using, because it's 100% fair for you to ask, what do you mean by X? And 99% of the time they can tell you're lying. So if the interviewer disagree, you need to back up your claim with science, right? Sometimes they can intentionally disagree and see how you address that. Or sometimes just curious questions like, oh, okay, but this is what I've heard. Like, can you expand a little bit more on that, right? Um, don't randomly throw keywords to impress people. It's always most of the time it would backfire, especially when you're trying to go and get a position at a good company. It would backfire. Do your homework. And things you say can be used against you. So you use some keywords that you're not familiar with, right? They might ask you certain follow-up questions. Make sure you're honest, right? If you're like, hey, this is as far as I know, but here's my interpretation. Like, it's what I know about this topic, so that they know exactly who you are. For the preparation, make sure you know the basic concepts that everyone in the field is supposed to know. For example, you want to apply for an IT company, like a tech company. You want to be able to show that you can code and you can program, right? So the basic concepts definitely required. So the interviewers typically want to see how to solve the problem rather than testing if you know the solution or not. So your approach is much more important than the solution. Again, based on the panelists, you probably during the seminar course, you probably also realize that uh, you should be able to convey that you can be trained to do a really good job at a company. All right, so that's it for the class today. So thank you very much for being here, and I'll hopefully see you all at some point in time after the hopefully COVID season is over. And thank you so much.